Hi, and welcome to Realistic Rookie Renovations. This is my first recorded project where I'm going to be doing some crawl space remediation that was caused by a previous rat problem under the crawl space. Our plan is to remove the old rat's nests in the insulation, replace the vapor barrier, and any of the compromised insulation.
All right, we're going to do a quick inventory for all the stuff you need for the project. So far, I think some of the most important is some PPE. So I've got an M95 mask. It's got a nice seal around the edges. I got some fog resistant goggles. This is kind of important. Make sure you get a decent pair. Don't get a cheap pair. I had a cheap pair that I started the project with. Fogged up within 5 minutes. These were great for the first half, and I'm about to start the second. I got some cut resistant gloves that are thin, but got some nice dexterity and stuff. Kind of a lot better than standard work gloves. This has been really crucial. A good work light. I bought this one a bit ago, but it's been nice. It's a 1,000 lumen rechargeable portable one, but I also got this one. It's a plug-in one that I'll probably plug in, uses ambient light, and then the other one will be a little more mobile. Obviously, we've got vapor barrier. This is some extra plastic I had lying around from an old project. And then I got a big giant roll. It's 100 feet long by 10 feet wide. This is vapor barrier tape, which is made of about, I think, 9 mil plastic. Moisture resistant. It's great for sealing the two pieces together. And another one I got, this is flashing tape. But this tape is really sticky and it binds to concrete and mortar. So I've got some insulation in the back that can't see, but I got 2 packs. I'm probably gonna have to go get a few more. Chemical sprayer, some bleach, some water. I used an old box fan to vent this whole place out, and of course I got a speaker for some music. I'm probably also going to be using a rake to kind of move some of the debris, rocks, dirt around when I put the barrier down. Same thing with a broom. I'll be sweeping up a lot of the droppings off the edge, the footing of where the concrete was poured before they put the cinder blocks down. So I think that's about it. Let's get going. All right, so as you can see, we've pulled a ton of insulation out across most of this, but I've got to get more. I've got to get up here under the rim joist and then pull all the rest of this off, find anywhere else the rats may have been, and then I'm gonna have to clean up all this wonderful poop and redo the vapor barrier.
Pulling the compromised insulation may have been the grossest part of the project because I was just getting a nice surprise of rat poop, dust, leaves, and nutshells dumped down on me every time I found a new nesting area. It was pretty disgusting, obviously, because of that, but it also smelled like an overflowing bathroom full of piss after a concert. Thankfully, I couldn't smell much through the mask, but I could smell it outside the crawl space after I had climbed out. The smell was actually the main reason we began the project because it was making the room above it smell a bit.
This is working. This is my little cat's paw. Just hooking it in there and yanking it out. Yeah, you can see it's in there. It's nice.
When all was said and done, I pulled about 150 square feet of compromised insulation from under the house, and I bagged it up for the dump. Once that was compressed down into contractor bags, it just about filled up an entire truck bed. The next phase was to spray the affected areas with a disinfectant. Basically, everything I came across said to use a 9-to-1 bleach solution, so I filled up my sprayer and was able to cover what I needed with just 1 gallon. Since there were some pockets of insulation that weren't compromised, I was able to leave a few bats in place. Earlier in the video, you may have seen me cutting a few small parts of insulation off, and those bats were just a little dirty from rats walking past, but none of the internal insulation was compromised. So I avoided spraying any of the insulation that remained, but I also avoided fully saturating the wood in most areas. It was just a surface spray. That way the water on the wood after the chlorine evaporated could fully dry, and I set that box fan in place so that it could get a nice breeze going. Something else to note is that this was not a recent rat infestation. We had an exterminator came out when we bought the house about 9 or so months prior, and he said there was nothing active. So on the positive side, the rodent problem was fixed, and nearly all of the crawl space entry points were sealed. They had just left the cleanup for the next owner. But to that point, I felt more comfortable doing this as a DIY job. Active or recent rat infestations can carry the risk of exposure to certain diseases. Their droppings can carry certain viruses for up to a few weeks, I believe. So if you are planning to clean up an active or recent rat infestation, I would recommend doing more research to protect yourself and or hiring a professional crew. As you can see, the next phase of the cleanup was to remove the old vapor barrier. This one wasn't really in poor condition with the exception of being covered in droppings and debris. Even though the crawl space has since been fully sealed where no rodents can get in, we wanted to be comprehensive and remove any incentive for other rodents to avoid them from coming back. When rodents smell the urine or droppings of other rodents, it tells them that the area is safe because other rodents live or used to live there, and it makes the place more inviting. This is also the reason I fully replaced the vapor barrier versus just laying a new layer over the top. So I continued to cut up sections of the old plastic sheet, roll up all the old droppings and debris, and bag everything. I did end up spraying some of the remaining debris around the edges with my disinfectant to mitigate airborne particles. I then gently swept and raked those droppings and debris off the concrete footings and bare dirt around the edge so that I didn't have to end up covering it with the new plastic. This not only cleaned things up from a smell and cleanliness perspective, but it did keep the dust off the footings and the wall, which will give my flashing tape better adhesion once I get to taping the new plastic barrier in place.
Alright, so I got things really cleaned up down here. It's good to see that the condition of the gravel underneath is pretty good.
On to laying the new plastic sheet. Another reason we wanted to redo the vapor barrier was that it didn't fully cover the bare earth under the house. Over the last few decades, I found out that code has changed from just covering a large percentage of exposed earth to the current code in my area requiring 12 inches of overlap between any sheets and up the walls. The old barrier was basically the exact size of the exposed earth. To make sure things followed code, the size of plastic sheet I ordered was 10 feet wide so it was able to rise up the wall and overlap in the middle. And I bought 2 types of tape to make sure things stayed in place, one being flashing tape and the other being vapor barrier tape. You can see I'm not fully sealing the entire edge of the plastic on the wall, and I'm alternating about 1.5 to 2 feet of tape with about the same sized gap in between. This is a ventilated crawl space and I'm not fully encapsulating it, so I didn't see a need to create a full tape seal against the edge of the wall. A full seal would have been extra work and materials without really providing better results. Doing it this way, I was able to save myself some time and money because those rolls of flashing tape aren't cheap. Plus, my method was already an improvement from the current barrier installation. The plastic sheeting wasn't too expensive either. It's just 6mm impact resistant sheeting, which is the standard to meet code. It was noticeably thinner than the original sheeting under the house, which is a compromise that I'm fine with since I don't have plans to store things under the house or perform other renovations that would require people to spend time under the house and risk tearing it. We also don't have a vapor or humidity problem under the house, so I'm fine just doing a really good comprehensive job in replacing the barrier with a standard replacement. Like many homeowners, I find this is a pretty common theme, which has also helped me to define the name of my channel and the approach I like to take with a lot of my projects. I obviously want to do a good job and replace anything that's compromised, but I also want to be realistic in terms of how detailed certain aspects of the work needs to be. In the case of just this vapor barrier, I researched that it costs roughly $2 to $4 per square foot. The area I just replaced is roughly 750 square feet, so this would have cost me a minimum of $1,500 and upwards of $3,000 or more for just the vapor barrier. To finish up the vapor barrier, I had to adhere the last few pieces of plastic sheeting to the crawl space entrance with the flashing tape. After that, I was able to take the white vapor barrier tape and seal up all the areas of overlap and the seams I had to cut to fit around the piers. Alright, so I started on that front one way over there. I went through and I've done each of the other seams, just taped up under and around. And then you can see I started my big long line just to bind the two, and I'm going to keep going. You see, I'm just putting it down, gently binding it right there. Alright, so another day. I'm hoping this is my last day under here, but right now I've got the whole vapor barrier redone, at least on this side of the house. There's actually a little bit I didn't get to. Then I'm going to take my shop vac and vacuum the sill plate around the edge before I put spray foam and the rest of the insulation. Let's do it. So it's not really recommended to clean rodent droppings in an enclosed space with a vacuum, especially if it's somewhat fresh and runs the risk of carrying disease. But like I said earlier, this is old, so I wasn't really at risk. I had also sprayed disinfectant, and I was just vacuuming a small amount of the remnant debris that didn't fall out with the insulation. My shop vac also has a HEPA filter, which is highly recommended in the case that you do need to vacuum. Once everything was absolutely clean and ready for installation, I installed the new insulation bats. These have a Rockwell rating of R30, which is code in my area for crawl space underfloor insulation. The insulation I pulled out was faced, so I just got the same to replace it. I think I could have gotten unfaced, but I read that it can be difficult to install because it pulls apart easily. Something else I read about when installing faced insulation in a crawl space is to install the facing touching the subfloor and to leave the fluffy side facing out. This is because that facing can act as sort of a vapor barrier, and if installed the other way, water vapor that accumulates between that facing and the subfloor can potentially cause mold inside that layer. You can see that I'm also pulling the insulation through and making sure that the paper facing spans the whole length of the subfloor between the joists. I'm also making sure it's not compressed or bunched up in any areas, because that can limit how effective the insulation is against the subfloor.
The final piece was to fill the gap between the last joist and the sill plate with spray foam. Then I could install the last bat of installation and be done.
Alright, so I just finished up. Let's go on a little tour. You can see the insulation above me, nice and filled in. These are some of the pieces that didn't necessarily need to go, but I was able to get this side, that side there. So it's a little more than 150 square feet that I was able to get. And now let's go for a tour of the vapor barrier. Start up here. You can see there's the crawl space entrance. And I ended up finding some extra clear plastic. I think it was 9 mil. But I decided to put that down just since this is like a high traffic area. So I went back here, and this is basically under the plumbing for our bathroom, our laundry room. But I've got everything taped. Looks like I've got to fix a couple seams here and there. But I was able to
come over, clean everything around the side. Oh yeah, and you can see the spray foam insulation up under the sill plate. I ended up cleaning up all around this this sump well and coming all the way back. Went around the piers, over the top. There's a couple bricks in the middle of there. And I'm gonna just keep this extra insulation under here. But it goes all the way back on both sides. And then back through there is maybe a project for another day. But this is my newly redone vapor barrier and insulation. No more rat's nests.